It was a night that shattered the fragile illusions I'd built around my world, one that etched itself into my memory like a scar that never quite heals. What unfolded was bizarre, intimate, and profoundly unsettling, forcing me to confront truths I'd never dared to acknowledge. The evening began innocuously enough, in the quiet suburb where we'd made our home for over 2 decades. The faint whir of the ceiling fan overhead, the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. These were the sounds that usually lulled our household into peace after supper. Little did I know that by dawn, my understanding of my family, my relationships, and even my own desires would be irrevocably altered. My name is Michael. At 45, I've prided myself on being the steady anchor in our lives, a reliable engineer with a stable job, a cozy house, and a marriage that, while not perfect, had weathered its storms. Sarah, my wife of 22 years, and I had shared laughter, arguments, and quiet companionship. We'd raised 2 children together, our son Ethan, now 20 and pursuing an online degree in graphic design while living at home, and our daughter Mia, who was away at university, chasing her dreams in environmental science. Ethan had always been the introspective one, the yin to Mia's vibrant yang. Where she was outgoing and adventurous, he preferred solitude, losing himself in video games, digital art, or whatever gadget he was disassembling in his room. As he matured into adulthood, I'd noticed subtle shifts, a lingering gaze here, a hesitant touch there, but I dismissed them as the awkwardness of youth transitioning into manhood. Sarah had been away for a week on a business conference, leaving the house feeling cavernous and echoey. That particular evening, it was just Ethan and me. We shared a simple meal of grilled chicken and salad at the kitchen table, the clink of forks against plates filling the silence. I attempted to bridge the gap, asking about his latest project, a digital rendering of a futuristic cityscape he'd been obsessing over. "How's the skyline coming along? You mentioned adding some neon effects last week." He nodded, his fork pausing mid-air. "It's okay. Still tweaking the lighting." His responses were curt, his eyes darting to mine before flitting away, a nervous energy humming beneath his calm exterior. "You seem off tonight, kiddo." "Everything all right?" I prodded gently. He offered a tight smile. "Yeah, Dad, just a lot on my mind." I didn't press further. Ethan had always guarded his inner world like a fortress, and I respected that boundary. After dinner, I retreated to the living room with a book, but my mind wandered. The empty spot on the couch where Sarah usually curled up felt like a void. Eventually, I headed upstairs to bed, the stairs creaking under my weight like an old friend's sigh. Sarah's absence made the king-sized bed feel vast and cold. I missed her, the way she'd nestle against me, her soft snores a comforting rhythm. Sleep eluded me, though, as I tossed and turned, my thoughts drifting to the mundane worries of work and family. It was around 1 a.m. when the first anomaly pierced the quiet. A soft thud from downstairs, followed by the unmistakable pad of footsteps on the hardwood floor. My pulse quickened. Burglars? I sat up, straining to listen. The sounds ascended the stairs, deliberate and unhurried. Ethan's door across the hall from mine stood ajar when I peeked out, his bed empty. Frowning, I returned to my room, chalking it up to a midnight snack run. I dimmed the lamp, closed my eyes, and tried to relax, the house's ambient hum coaxing me toward slumber. Hours later, or perhaps mere minutes in the haze of half-sleep, I stirred to the creak of my bedroom door. My heart lurched as I squinted into the shadows. The room was bathed in the faint glow of street lights filtering through the curtains. A silhouette hovered in the doorway, then advanced with tentative steps. "Sarah?" I murmured groggily, my mind clinging to the hope of her early return. No reply came, only the subtle rustle of clothing as the figure approached. The bed dipped under added weight as someone perched on the edge. A hand brushed my thigh, light, almost reverent, mimicking Sarah's affectionate caresses, but with an unfamiliar hesitance. I blinked, fully awake, my vision adjusting to the dim light. It wasn't Sarah. It was Ethan, his face partially obscured by shadows, but his wide eyes betrayed a storm of emotions. "Ethan, what the hell?" My voice was a mix of shock and concern, laced with unease. His hand lingered on my arm now, frozen in place. He looked like a deer caught in headlights, his lips parting as if to explain, but no words emerged. "Is something wrong? Are you hurt?" I sat up, my mind racing through possibilities. Nightmare? Illness? He shook his head faintly. I didn't mean to scare you. I just wanted to check on you." His voice was barely above a whisper, trembling. Check on me? At this hour? The situation felt off-kilter, like a puzzle with missing pieces. "I'm fine, son. But this is weird. Go back to bed." He hesitated, his gaze searching mine in the moonlight as if pleading for understanding. Finally, he nodded and stood, retreating with slumped shoulders. "Sorry, Dad. Good night." The door clicked shut behind him, leaving me staring at the ceiling, a knot of worry twisting in my gut. What was that about? Had I missed signs of his distress? The rest of the night passed in fitful sleep, haunted by replays of his uncertain expression. Morning arrived too soon, the sun streaming through the windows like an unwelcome intruder. I dragged myself downstairs, the aroma of fresh coffee wafting from the kitchen. Ethan was already there, nursing a mug, his phone in hand as he scrolled absent-mindedly. He looked up, his posture rigid, a forced casualness in his demeanor. "Morning," I said, aiming for normalcy as I poured my own cup. "You beat me to it today." "Couldn't sleep much," he replied, his eyes avoiding mine. I sat opposite him, the silence stretching awkwardly. "About last night," I began. He cut me off, his tone edged with defensiveness. "It was nothing. I overreacted. Let's just drop it." But dropping it wasn't easy. The memory clung to me like a shadow, too deliberate to ignore. Was he lonely? Struggling with something deeper? The day dragged on in a haze of routine. I mowed the lawn, fixed a leaky faucet, anything to distract from the unease. Ethan holed up in his room, the faint clicks of his keyboard the only sign of life. By evening, exhaustion hit me like a wave, and I collapsed into bed early, determined to shake off the strangeness. Sleep came reluctantly, my mind a whirlwind of unanswered questions. Why the nighttime visit? Was it isolation from Sarah's absence? Or something more profound, something I wasn't ready to name? I must have dozed off, because the door's creak jolted me awake again, the clock glowing 2:17 a.m. My breath caught as a figure slipped inside, the moonlight outlining Ethan's form. He paused in the doorway, then approached, sitting gingerly on the bed's edge. His hair was disheveled, his pajamas rumpled, vulnerability etched in every line of his body. "Ethan," I sighed, a blend of exasperation and concern. "This again? What's really going on?" He stared at the floor, twisting the bedsheet in his hands. "I'm sorry. It's stupid. The house feels so empty without Mom and Mia. I hate being alone in my room. Memories keep flooding back, good ones, bad ones. I just needed company." His words struck a chord. I'd felt that emptiness too, the silence amplifying my own solitude. Perhaps we'd both been adrift in our ways. "I get it," I said softly, reaching out to pat his back. "It's tough, but we can talk about this in the morning." He looked up, his eyes glistening in the low light. "Can I stay here, just for a bit?" "Like when I was a kid and had nightmares." The request hung in the air, innocent yet charged. After a beat, I nodded. "All right, but keep it PG. and try to sleep." He lay down on Sarah's side, a chasm of space between us. I turned off the lamp, the darkness enveloping us like a blanket. His breathing evened out eventually, but mine remained shallow, awareness of his proximity prickling my skin. In the depths of night, I awoke to a soft pressure, a hand on my chest, tentative and warm. "Ethan?" I whispered, my voice husky. He shifted closer, his breath warm against my shoulder. "Bad dream," he murmured. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." But he didn't pull away. The air thickened, unspoken tensions simmering. My heart raced, not from alarm, but from a confusing rush of emotions, protectiveness, curiosity, something deeper I couldn't define. "It's okay," I assured him, my hand covering his briefly. "You're safe." We lay like that, the silence profound, until sleep claimed us both. The pattern persisted over the next nights, each visit peeling back layers of our guarded facades. One evening, as he entered, his touch lingered longer, a brush against my side that sent an unexpected shiver through me. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice unsteady, not from repulsion but intrigue. "I don't know," he confessed, his face flushed. "It feels right somehow." He retreated quickly, apologizing profusely, but the seed was planted. I didn't stop him from returning. In truth, I began to anticipate it. The closeness filled a void I hadn't known existed. Days blurred into a tense routine. Ethan avoided me during daylight hours, barricading himself in his room, while I wrestled with my thoughts at work. Afternoons found me pacing, replaying our nocturnal encounters. Was this wrong? Undeniably. Yet it awakened something dormant, a raw, unfiltered connection. By the fourth day, I couldn't bear the distance. I knocked on his door, my knuckles white. "We need to talk," I said when he opened it, his expression a mix of hope and fear. He let me in, his room a sanctuary of posters and glowing screens. We sat on his bed. He let me in, his room a sanctuary of posters and glowing screens. We sat on his bed, the air thick with anticipation. "About these nights," I started. He interrupted, voice raw. "I know it's messed up, Dad, but with everyone gone, you're all I have. And it's more than that. I felt this way for a while, confused, drawn to you." His confession hung heavy, mirroring my own turmoil. I didn't recoil. Instead, I reached for his hand. "I don't have answers, Ethan, but I'm not pushing you away." We talked for hours, unraveling years of unspoken feelings, the conversation weaving through vulnerability and tentative acceptance. That night, when he came to my room, there was no pretense. We lay together, boundaries blurring in the darkness, exploring the forbidden with hesitant touches and whispered admissions. It was strange, exhilarating, terrifying, a redefinition of our bond. Sarah's return loomed, but for now, in the quiet hours, we found solace in each other. The world outside faded, leaving only us, forever changed by those unforgettable nights. The bee, echoes of the unspoken. It was a crisp autumn evening when I found myself standing outside her door, my hand hovering over the knob, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Her name was Elena, my stepdaughter, who had come into my life when she was just a teenager after I married her mother 5 years ago. Now, at 22, she was a young woman navigating the complexities of adulthood, living with me while her mom traveled for work. The house felt emptier without her mother's presence. And lately, the silence between Elena and me had grown thicker, laced with something I couldn't quite name. My nerves screamed at me to turn away, to retreat to the safety of my study and bury myself in work. But I pushed the door open anyway. She was sitting on her bed, scrolling through her phone, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders like a shadow. She looked up, her green eyes widening slightly in surprise. "Hey, Alex," she said, using my first name as she always did. Never Dad, which somehow made the distance between us feel both comforting and vast. "I just wanted to check in," I started, my voice steadier than I felt. "About last night." She flinched almost imperceptibly, a subtle shift in her posture that spoke volumes. "I'm sorry," she murmured, setting her phone aside. "I know it was awkward. I shouldn't have said those things." "It's okay," I interjected gently, stepping further into the room. "I'm not upset. I just want to understand what's going on." I sat on the edge of her desk chair, keeping a respectful distance, but the air felt charged, like the prelude to a thunderstorm. She fidgeted with the hem of her sweater, her fingers twisting the fabric nervously. "I want to tell you something," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I guess I just feel really alone sometimes. And when the house is quiet, it's like the walls are pressing in on me, even when you're here." Her words trailed off, but they landed like a punch to my gut. I'd always tried to be there for her, driving her to classes, helping with her resume, listening to her vent about her part-time job at the coffee shop. Hearing that she still felt isolated despite my efforts stung deeply. "I'm sorry if I've made you feel that way," I replied softly, leaning forward slightly. "You're not alone. I'm here for you. Always." She nodded, but her gaze remained fixed on the floor, her long lashes casting shadows on her cheeks. "I know, it's just not the same." "Hey, what do you mean?" I pressed, my curiosity laced with concern. She hesitated, chewing on her lower lip, a habit she'd had since she was younger. Then she met my eyes. "It's hard to explain. I just want to feel close to someone, really close, and I'm not sure how to do that anymore." Her voice was raw, laced with a vulnerability that hung heavy in the air, making the room feel smaller. I didn't have all the answers. Hell, I barely understood my own tangled emotions. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let her drown in that loneliness. Yet, another part of me, the rational, guarded part, warned against getting too close. There was an inexplicable pull toward her, a warmth that went beyond stepfatherly affection, and acknowledging it terrified me. "Elena," I began carefully, choosing my words like stepping stones across a raging river, "I think you're confused. It's normal to feel lost sometimes, especially at your age." "I'm not confused," she said firmly, cutting me off. Her eyes locked onto mine with a quiet intensity that made my chest tighten, like a vice squeezing my ribs. "I know what I feel." "I know it's not normal, but I can't help it." I opened my mouth to respond, to protest, to rationalize it away, but the words evaporated. Instead, we sat in silence, the weight of her confession pressing down like a storm cloud, dark and ominous, over the dimly lit room. I wanted to comfort her, to wrap her in assurances that everything would be okay. But this was uncharted territory, a mapless wilderness, and I was utterly lost. That night, I tried to act like everything was normal. We ordered pizza for dinner, chatting about mundane things. Her upcoming exams at the community college, my latest project at the architecture firm, the ridiculous plot twists in the TV show we'd been binge-watching. Surface-level conversations that kept the air light like a fragile bubble. But underneath it all simmered a tension we both pretended not to notice. I could feel her gaze lingering on me when I turned to grab a napkin, and it left me unsettled. A flutter in my stomach I couldn't quite dismiss. When I finally retreated to my bedroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that the night wasn't over. Lying in the dark, Elena's words replayed in my mind, her voice full of that raw vulnerability that left me breathless, questioning everything. Sleep evaded me, my thoughts a whirlwind of concern and confusion. Finally, unable to bear it, I got up and padded down the hallway to her room. The door was ajar, a sliver of light spilling out. "Elena," I whispered into the quiet. She didn't answer right away, but I knew she was awake. Her breathing was too uneven. "Would you like to just sit with me for a while?" I asked, my voice tentative. She hesitated, then nodded slowly, her silhouette shifting in the bed. "Are you sure?" she murmured, sitting up. "Yes," I said quietly, stepping inside. She followed me back to the living room. We both knew better than to complicate things further by going to a bedroom, and we sat on the couch, the low hum of the refrigerator, the only sound breaking the silence. For a moment, we just existed there in the dim glow of the streetlight filtering through the curtains, the air thick with unspoken words. "Please, don't leave right now," she said softly, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "All right, but we'll talk about this in the morning." She gave a small, grateful smile and leaned back against the cushions, staring at the ceiling. I sat beside her, maintaining a careful distance. Though the space between us felt electric, a mix of emotions swirled inside me. Concern for her well-being, confusion about my own feelings, and an ache I couldn't quite name, like a storm brewing in my soul. I didn't know where this path would lead, but I knew one thing for certain. This was far from over. The next morning, I woke early, the events of the previous night replaying like a looped film in my mind. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee, staring out the kitchen window at the falling leaves, when I heard footsteps on the stairs. I didn't need to look to know it was Elena. Her presence filled the room before she even spoke, a subtle shift in the atmosphere. "Morning," she said softly, her voice laced with uncertainty. She was still in her pajamas, her hair tousled from sleep. I turned to face her with a small smile, trying to mask the turmoil inside. "Morning. Coffee's on the counter." She nodded, poured herself a cup, and for a moment, we just stood there in silence, the steam rising from our mugs like ghosts of unspoken thoughts. The air between us was heavy, pregnant with the promise of a storm about to break. Finally, I set my mug down with a soft clink. "Elena, we need to talk," I said, my tone gentle but firm. Her shoulders tensed visibly. "About last night?" she asked quietly, her fingers tightening around her cup. "About everything," I replied. "I need to understand what's going on with you and with us." She hesitated, her eyes dropping to the floor, tracing the patterns in the tile. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice cracking slightly. "I've just been carrying this around for so long, and I couldn't anymore. I know I didn't handle it right, but I can't pretend it's not there." Her words hit me hard, a tidal wave of emotion crashing over me. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that perhaps it was just the stress of her mother's absence or the pressures of young adulthood confusing her, but I could see in her eyes this wasn't a fleeting whim. It was deep-rooted, real. "Elena," I said carefully, stepping closer but not too close, "whatever you're feeling, it's complicated. We can't just act without thinking it through." "I know," she said quietly, finally meeting my gaze. "But that doesn't make it go away." The silence returned, heavier this time, wrapping around us like a fog. I wanted to reassure her, to promise that it would all be okay, but I didn't know how. This was new territory for both of us. One wrong step, and everything we had built could shatter like glass. The rest of the day was awkward, to say the least. Elena retreated to her room, burying herself in textbooks and online lectures, while I kept myself busy with chores, mowing the lawn, fixing a leaky faucet, anything to distract from the echo of our conversation. But no matter what I did, my mind kept drifting back to her, the way she'd looked at me the night before, So open and vulnerable made my chest feel tight, a knot of emotions I couldn't untangle. By evening, I was sitting in the living room with a glass of scotch, the amber liquid swirling as I stared at the fireplace, the quiet settling around me like a blanket. That's when I saw her in the doorway. She looked hesitant, her hands shoved into the pockets of her hoodie, but there was a quiet determination in her eyes, a spark that hadn't been there earlier. "Can I sit?" she asked quietly, her voice cutting through the silence. I nodded, gesturing to the spot beside me. She walked over and sat down, leaving a deliberate space between us, though it felt insignificant in the grand scheme. "I'm sorry," she said after a long pause, her words tumbling out in a rush, "for making things awkward. I didn't mean to. I just didn't know how to handle it." "I know," I said softly, setting my glass aside. "It's okay. We'll figure it out." She looked at me then, her eyes filled with that same raw honesty that had disarmed me before. "Do you still care about me?" "Hervo!" Me then, her eyes filled with that same raw honesty that had disarmed me before. "Do you still care about me?" Her voice was barely above a whisper, laced with fear. "Of course I do," I replied instantly, placing a hand on her shoulder. A paternal gesture, or so I told myself. "You're my stepdaughter. Nothing will change that." She seemed to relax a little at my touch, her tense muscles softening. "I just want us to be close again," she said, her voice trembling. I missed that. Something inside me ached at her words, a deep, resonant pain that echoed my own unspoken longings. I pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly, the scent of her shampoo, lavender and vanilla, filling my senses. "I'm here," I whispered into her hair. "I'm not going anywhere." For a moment, it felt like things might really be okay, like we could mend the fractures and rebuild the bridge between us. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were glossy with unshed tears, reflecting the flickering light from the lamp. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not giving up on me." I couldn't speak past the lump in my throat, so I just squeezed her hand, our fingers intertwining briefly before she let go. "Elena," I said softly, breaking the silence. "We'll get through this together." She gave me a small, hopeful smile, one that lit up her face despite the shadows. "I know we will." As she walked away, heading back upstairs, I sat there in the quiet, the weight of the day settling over me. Our journey wasn't over, not by a long shot. There were still storms to weather, confessions to unpack, and boundaries to navigate. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a glimmer of hope that we might emerge stronger on the other side. The pull between us remained, a thread of something deeper, but perhaps in time, we could redefine what close meant without losing ourselves in the process.